right, back at it. Got Lucas, my teammate here. We're in the library. This is Athlete Builder. I'm Jim Beebe. Today's guest, Zach Riley, Dr. Zach Riley. A couple things about Zach just right off the bat. Wanted to have him on because he's a real bright guy. PhD, professor, IU, downtown, neurology, kinesiology, but also as an athlete, high levels of success as a thrower. Came out of Ball State for his undergrad, spent 4 years there, two-time All-American, Hall of Fame recipient, 2014-2015 class. Threw the hammer in track for Ball State, went on to nationals, took 7th in the world of nationals in the NCAAs in 2002, and then attempted at the Olympics as well in the trials. So strong background throwing, very strong physically, more powerful than strong. And then you add in PhD or neurology, teaches kinesiology down at IU, and been in the throwing world ever since he essentially graduated. So we've crossed paths a few times. He's been out at my gym for a number of contests. We've always followed him from afar. He's helped run some clinics with us with power and explosion, even with my daughter when she had a small stint in throwing in high school. So today, welcome to the show, Zach Riley, Dr. Riley. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jim. And you didn't say how we met first, though.
What year was that?
2016.
Yeah, so only a few years in. That was down in that was in Disney, wasn't it? Disney World.
Yeah, on a shuttle.
On a shuttle
bus.
So we're done. I'm part of a family of 15 that day. My in-laws want to take all the grandkids to Disney World. So my wife and I, we have our 6, and then her brother had 3. So there's us 8 plus those 5 plus the 2 grandparents, right? So full deal. And we were down at Disney and Universal. And I'm standing on the bus. Other people are sitting. We're heading on the tram back to the hotel. And was I wearing a Valenti shirt?
Yeah, Refined Savage.
Yeah. So Mark Valenti runs Blind Dog Gym out of Vermillion, Ohio, Northern Ohio. And I did a Highlander event earlier that year. So a Highlander Games is part strongman, part Highland Games and throwing. And I'm just wearing this shirt casually. And I look over and there's a gorilla on the bus sitting there with a bunch of awesome tattoos. And he goes, "Hey, do you throw?" And I go, not well and not far, but I have fun with it. And I like to do strongman stuff. So I turn to him naively, don't recognize him. I don't know him from Adam. I'm completely naive. And I say, "So are you a thrower too?" And he goes, "I think I'm ranked number 2 in the world right now." And I was like, "No shit. That's humbling right off the bat. I can't throw 10 feet and you're number 2 in the world with world records." And here we are in Disney. So you were there with your daughter and your wife, right?
Yeah, and my niece. We had taken, she was at the right age at that time for the Disney trip. So we did the, obligatory. For us, one Disney trip was enough. But.
Gotcha. And what are the odds that we're in Florida and we're both out of the state of Indiana? I'm on the west side of Indianapolis. You're down in Columbus, Indiana, but you work downtown Indy. So I'm like, what are the chances we're going to be that close and proximity? And then our paths kept crossing because we would have some contests at my place or a clinic. And, we asked Dr. Riley to come out, and sure, Zach would show up.
Yep, loved it. Loved everything we did.
Well, I appreciate it. Just a little background on Zach. He's competed at the amateur level and won that. He's competed at pro level. He's won contests there. He's set all-time world records in the Highland Games. And it's not just hammer toss like he did in college. In college also they have shot and disc. But there's nine events?
9 events, yeah.
9 events in the Highland Games, right? So you got to be a lot better at a lot more things. And all your training and experience and knowledge and honestly hardworking habits led you to the point where you set world records that I can find on YouTube today. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
So my first question is, of all the 9 events, which one's your favorite and why?
Oh, that's easy. Lightweight for distance. It goes super far. It's 28-pound weight that you spin 2 times and throw it with one arm. I'm a speed junkie, not methamphetamine or drugs, but no, I'm a
All right.
speed junkie. I like moving fast. I like feeling on that verge of out of control in whatever I'm doing and towing that line, and that's the event that gives me that rush the best. So
All
yeah,
gas, no brakes. Can you hold on enough so you're still within the trig so you don't fault
exactly.
and use all
And
that
being
power to heave it?
and being that I'm the shortest guy that has ever thrown that the farthest, I'm sure, and I'm just not built for it, and I love that. So
Now your event in college was the hammer.
it was the hammer throw. So
But typically
I
what
mean,
I hear is a lot of folks don't like hammer in Highland Games.
yeah, hammer's fine. I mean, Highland Game's a little different because you can't move your feet.
Sure.
The reason I liked it in college was the same way I like the lightweight for distance now. Is that it's on that verge out of control, and it really takes every part of you to throw it. It's not a you know it. You don't have any inherent advantages, disadvantages. It's whoever goes the fastest throws the farthest.
The
So
release point is kind of important too.
it is. It is. But, it's anything can be overcome if, again, that all gas, no brakes. If someone really embraces that, you'd be amazed what you could do. So,
That's true. That's true. Now, the Muncie area, so you went there for undergrad. Where'd you go to grad school then after that?
so I did. So I did my undergrad at Muncie, and then I stayed on for my master's in biomechanics at Ball State. The first year, I was a grad assistant strength coach with football and a lot of other teams. Actually, me, Matt Winning, Mike Robertson, a lot of the strength world legends, I guess you want to say. Not me, but they stayed in it. But after the first year, I realized babysitting 400 Division One athletes wasn't the gig I wanted. So I went into the lab, and the second year, I got paid as a research assistant. And then once I finished there, I moved out to Colorado, University of Colorado at Boulder. I did my PhD in neuroscience. Um, 4 years there, and then I moved to Northwestern in Chicago, to the medical campus downtown Chicago, and I did a fellowship in biomedical engineering there, and then moved down to Indy and started being a professor. So
Been there ever since.
ever since the 14th year right now.
No kidding. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Muncie, Indiana, Ball State, they have some names come out of there, or people that can move serious amounts of weight with Robertson and Matt Winning, both with all-time world records, enormous 2,000 plus totals, super strong, big impact on the strength world as coaches as well. So you're in good company, at least, right?
Yeah, but it
Right?
shows like I still talk to Matt on occasion, Winning, and it's funny because I went over to his gym in Columbus maybe like 2 years ago and spent quite a bit of time with him just hanging out, not even training wise or anything. And we were just reminiscing about the fact because he stayed in the game, and then I pursued the education, and he's very successful, makes a lot of money, very does his thing. But it's always funny when I see people refer to him now as like the old guru, and I'm thinking, we're the same age. We went to school at the same time. I mean, I know
Right?
Jim, you know what that feels like, but
I'm a good, 6, 7 years older than you.
oh yeah,
Yeah, I'll
old
be
man
49.
Jim.
I'll be 49 on Sunday. Right? Right? Right?
There you go.
Now, your your path, as a young kid to essentially a power sport. No one usually comes out at a young age says, "Hey, I want to be a thrower," unless their parents are throwers, or they're probably
Yeah,
from Iceland or some Nordic country.
yeah.
So, talk to us about growing up and how that translated for you through middle school, high school, college, that, you know what, maybe this is really a better gig for me than maybe some other sports?
Well, I had a really interesting path in that growing up in southern Indiana. First of all, the important thing is neither of my parents ever played a sport in their life. In fact, my dad always says the only time he ever worked out in his life was in basic training before he went to Vietnam.
Mm,
So that kind of shows you um, I was just never around it. But then when I was young, and I have an older sister, she never played a sport. But when I was young, my parents got me into soccer. And soccer was really the first love. I think that's where I developed a lot of my coordination and lower leg strength. And then, the typical baseball, basketball, football. Um, but I think what really shaped me, and a lot of that was I was on, I was always on bad teams. And despite being good on those teams, I was always on bad teams. We lost all the time. I mean, high school, I went to Columbus North. We were largest class, and we would win 2 games a year. I mean,
mm.
regularly 2 games a year. And I always hated it because no matter what I did personally, didn't really matter. And I realized the other people didn't take it as seriously as I did. And then so I never had done track. I had always done other sports. And then senior year of high school, I had friends that are like, well, you should come out and throw shot put. You love lifting. And, um, at that time I was only 185 pounds, but by senior year, I had a 600-pound deadlift, a 300-pound clean, 350 bench. I mean, at 185 pounds. So I knew the strength was there. Um, and then, yeah, friends convinced me to go out and try the shot put. So I went out, tried it, ended up loving it. I think I got 13th in the state. So I went to state the one year I did it in high school. And when I was at the state meet, my dad, of all things, was like, so I had applied and gotten into Ball State, and I would like to say it was my first choice. I applied and got in because I got in no other schools. I had gotten rejected from IU, Purdue. I was interested in anything but academics in high school. Um, you know,
The
chasing around the
GPA,
girls,
right?
yeah, partying, doing about everything that didn't involve success later in life, and but at that time, luckily, Ball State, if you just paid the application fee, I swear they took you. It was not like it is today. I mean, now it's actually kind of hard to get into, but no, at that time, it might as well have been Ivy Tech. It was just sign up and you were in. And so I was already planning on going there. And my dad uh, he emailed the track coach, I believe it was, the head coach at the time, Joe Rogers, who was a legendary distance coach at Ball State. But he just said, my son's coming there. He just competed at the state meet, got 13th, whatever. What's the chances he could walk on? And Joe Rogers said, well, tell him to come to this meeting at this time, blah, blah, blah. And that was my introduction to college athletics. And it was pretty funny because I moved up there, started the semester, went to the call out meeting, did all that, did about 2 weeks of training. Then I decided that college athletics wasn't for me and partying was. So then I quit for about 2.5 months. Didn't do any training, didn't do any throwing, didn't all I effectively did was drink um, and party. And then one day, I think it was like November, guy who ended up being super influential in my life ended up being my roommate the rest of college, but Brian Troxel, um, he had thrown at Newcastle and he was in my regional in high school, and he had seen me throw and win regionals in high school, and he's like, what are you doing, dude? You have this opportunity and all you're doing is partying. And so he convinced me to come back out for the team around November, December freshman year. So
So when you walk in to talk to the coach, hey, I know I quit. Can I come back and give it another shot? How's that go?
Oh, I just showed up at practice. I didn't even say nothing.
I'm here now.
Yeah,
Don't mind me.
I
Don't
didn't
mind
even.
me. Where do you want me to
But
throw it?
but the funny thing is I was such a nobody. It didn't matter.
Gotcha.
It really. I wasn't moving the needle for anything. I mean, I was inconsequential. So whether I was out there or not did not matter.
Okay.
So then we get to track season, indoor season freshman year, and I had thrown in a couple meets. I had thrown the shot put around like 49, 50 feet, and you move up to the 16-pound shot in college, and somehow I ended up being the two, sometimes one shot putter on our team. And then between indoor and outdoor, I was like, well, I'm not going to get much better because at that time, 5'11", 220 pounds. And so I switched to the spin, the rotational shot put, literally over spring break, my freshman year. And then I came out and threw 52, 53 and qualified for a lot of other meets and ended up making conference in the shot put. Well, here's where things got funny because I knew I was already going to go to the conference. They take your top two throwers for each event for conference, and I knew I was going to the MAC conference meet. And we already had a pretty good hammer thrower, and our other hammer thrower had gotten hurt. And so my throws coach, who was a graduate assistant, was just like, "Hey Zach, we're already taking you, so learn how to throw the hammer." And this was like 2 weeks out from conference. And at that point, I hadn't even seen the hammer because they were on different areas of our practice field. I didn't pay attention to it. I didn't know anything.
Right.
So one day I went over and I was like, all right, I guess, coach said I had to learn the hammer. So
And by coach, it was your GA.
yeah, our GA throws coach. And so I
Right.
went and ended up going to MAC meet and I got 23rd out of 23.
All right.
I threw 126 feet or something like that. But why this is important is sophomore year, I went to MAC at Buffalo and was seated ninth, won the meet, and threw 196 feet. So
Jeez.
I went from 126 or whatever to 196 in 1 year. And the whole reason behind that was I got home from that MAC meet freshman year and getting last place. The one thing that really motivates me more than anything else is I just hate to suck at something. I
Right.
can't stand to, be below average or not below average, like worse. And so I went out, I borrowed a hammer from our equipment shed, and I went out every day that summer and threw. I didn't go home for the summer. I never went home for a summer in college. And my roommate, who was our javelin thrower, he ended up, the guy that got me back out on the team, he became my roommate as soon as school ended. We started rooming together, and he had a similar thing with the javelin. He sucked, and he wanted to get better at it, and so we'd go out every day and throw, and that was what we did for the next 3 years at college. Was we lived together, we'd train every day, and we'd lift and throw, and that was it.
Since
So,
you're so much better with the rotational versus the glide, why no discus?
well, again, it was one of those. I never did it in high school because I just was going to throw the shot put. I didn't even understand there was another event. And then freshman year, I never practiced it because again, I was inconsequential. They weren't going to push me to go do other things. Um, I ended up sophomore, junior, and senior year. I never practiced the discus, and I got to go as our number two discus thrower, and I finished fourth, third, and third in the MAC conference in the discus without practicing it.
Dang.
And ended up throwing 172 feet with the 2K discus. So, yeah. But I hated it. It wasn't fun. The shot put wasn't fun. I mean, by the time I hit sophomore year, I practiced hammer 4 days a week and would do the shot and discus maybe half a day in between like doing plyo workouts. So I just hated them.
Gotcha.
So
True or false? Sophomore, junior, senior year, you're still finding time to chase the ladies and have a few drinks.
doing all that just fine. I was more effective at it. And the better I got as an athlete, it became easier. So now it was
Higher
funny because
ROI.
yeah, exactly. I knew when to do it. A lot of kids. The one thing I learned early on is because I partied and did all the things you shouldn't do in high school. Outside of that little blip freshman year, first semester, I didn't need to. I didn't need to test the waters. I knew what parties were like. I knew, so it wasn't one of those things where I needed to go buck wild all the time. So then once I settled into actually being a Division 1 athlete, Saturday nights were fine. Occasionally if we were out of season, it'd be Friday, Saturday, but it was regularly, sophomore, junior, senior year, I was qualifying for these track meets and going all over the country, and they would literally just put me on a plane alone and fly to these meets because no one else would qualify for them on our team. So for instance, I flew to New York City for an indoor meet like 2 months after 9/11 by myself. I remember circling the city and the guy coming over the radio on the plane saying, "Oh, look down, you can still see the smoldering." But it was one of those, like, they just put me on a plane and say, "All right, you're going to go compete here." And so then I'd get back at 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning, and all my roommates would, be still up partying, and it was just different though. And I understood
Sure.
that. I was fine with that, and I knew I'd still have my time. So
Did they even send a coach with you, or you just go by yourself?
half the time I'd have a coach, half the time by myself. It really
Okay.
just, like NCAA's, they would send, the head coach would go mainly because he wanted to just go.
Sure.
And I probably shouldn't say this, but usually as soon as I competed and would get an All American award, we'd go out drinking, and so
Right.
life was good.
Life was good. Had
Different time.
did you throw out in Eugene at Oregon?
Yeah. So junior year NCAA's were out at Eugene.
How was that?
So this is interesting. Nowadays it's a lot crazier because they've redone the stadium, and but you definitely got that sense of history when you went out there. But track's funny because you can go to some big meets. Like I would go to Drake Relays every year in Des Moines, Iowa, and it's outside of Penn Relays, Drake Relays. It's probably the biggest meet in the country. And the first year I went, the stadium for the track and everything is huge, and in the middle of downtown Des Moines. It's beautiful. They put all of us on a bus and bussed us to some high school out in the cornfields of Iowa, and that was where we threw the hammer.
Ugh.
And you had all these foreign hammer throwers like Slovakians and Hungarians that come to the US to throw, and literally we get off this bus and it's a giant cornfield, and they're like, "This is Drake Relay's hammer." And it was like, "Oh, this is cool." I mean, those guys were throwing like world leading marks, and
Right.
it was, you were in a cornfield. So
Mm.
that's track for you.
Right. How was the rest of your track team outside of you in high school and college? Because you led off by saying, well, I wasn't part of any good teams. So did that change?
It changed. Columbus North does have a strong track history. Actually, they've won a bunch of cross country state titles, and Columbus North, as a large school, is very good at fringe sports. We're very bad at the core sports. So we'll win soccer state titles, cross country, swimming, all these things, but then we suck at football, basketball, baseball. So we
Gotcha.
had some decent track athletes, but at Ball State, what was funny was when I got there, even placing at the MAC conference meet was looked at as like, that's a win. Um, and I know I was the first 3-time MAC champ, and then my roommate, the javelin thrower, he ended up winning MAC his junior senior year in the javelin. And then we also had a girl hammer thrower that we threw together all the time. She ended up being a MAC champion in the hammer. Our throws ended up being dominant. And I'd like to think, because again, I broke down that wall and it was like, oh, just scoring's not good enough. Let's see if we can win it. So
nice. Would it be safe to say that there was a shift or an increase in maturity in that you would lift in high school because it's cool to be strong, right? And it's cool to be powerful.
mhm.
And you're still doing that in college because it's cool, but also it translates well to your sport. But now you're like, hey, I'm getting kind of good at this. Your confidence has seen the reps where you kind of earn the confidence now. Now it's like, all right, now I think I got the hang of this. Let's see where I can push it. So do you think you were more focused and then more driven as each year progressed? Because hey, I'm putting in more effort. I'm doing more extra work on the side. I'm benefiting from it. As a junior, I'm an All-American. This is pretty cool. I'm going all over the country. This is pretty fun now. Would that be a
You
fair
know,
assessment?
it is fair. I think the other thing and the important thing is I never really had a coach. So I had three different throwing coaches, all GAs, for my 4 years at college. Not a one of them knew the hammer throw really. Um, so I learned it by watching, 3-second world record clips on the internet that would take 30 minutes to load. And that was how I learned. And it really, I think it's paid off my whole life because I've never had strong coaching. And I'm not hating on my coaches I've had. The big issue is a lot of it was just people doing it for fun, because those were the level of athletics that I was around most of the time. And so I was very much I'll figure out how to do it. And then in the weight room, it was very much, well, just throw another plate on and we'll see what happens. And that was always, um, and to be totally honest, when I got to Ball State, I mean, it was berserk in terms of, Matt, like a lot of times I would train with the power lifters because they would usually train right after track got done in the evenings. And, if I needed someone to squat with, I could squat with Matt. And it was also, we were on the leading edge of using bands. I'll never forget, we had gotten a set of the old jump stretch bands and no one knew how to use them. We knew we needed to hook them under the squat rack and over the barbell for squats. Well, day one, Justin Cecil, my strength coach, who was a little guy who was amazing, just tough as nails. But he's like, all right, Zach, we just got these in. You're going to be the first one to test them. And I was like, yeah, if this is going to help me
Perfect.
be more powerful, for sure. So, at that time I was squatting around 7 and we put like 500 on the bar. And I think we had a blue and a green on is what we worked up to. And I mean, this is one of those, I'm walking out and these are cheap barbells in the athletic weight room and they're oscillating so bad. And I feel like my spine's crushing. And we put so much band tension on that we walked it out and we flipped the squat rack into the mirror.
Oh shit.
As soon as I walk it out, I brace, set my shoulders, the bar oscillates a little bit, and then the rack just goes straight into
Dang,
the mirrors.
that's bad.
So yeah, we were definitely we were leading edge, and a lot of times Justin and Matt and those guys would just say, "Hey, why don't you try this?"
Right.
And all right, we would challenge. We'd have challenges. I remember one time we had a challenge to see who could do the most reps of cleans with 275, just hang cleans in a row. And I did 14 reps and then passed out. We were working up to like max snatches one day, and I headbutted the bar as it was coming up, knocked myself out doing that. I remember one time we were doing speed work with squats, and this was, of course, the original West Side speed work. It was not low percentages, and Justin had me do 595 for 10 sets of 1 with 45-second rest on squats. And this is
That's high
no,
intensity.
yeah, no knee sleeves, no wraps, no nothing. Just
Just
walk
you and a
under the
belt.
bar. And yeah, I don't even think I had a belt, and I was in track shoes. Like I
Mm.
didn't even have my Olympic lifters yet. But it was one of those, by the time you'd set up and do the rep and rack it, you had to start working towards unracking it again.
Yeah, the whole setup, a lot of times the setup, the walkout, and the racking easily takes a lot longer than the actual rep itself, even if it's 2 or 3 reps.
Yeah. It was brutal, but we always did stuff like that. It was fun.
A lot of
You
times
know.
when I'm coaching athletes, and I'll say, hey, sumo deadlift is great for your building lateral strength, or speed squats are great for this and that. But I'll also then say, well, this is what the book says, and this is what I've seen. This is what I've seen work for me and for others. But that doesn't mean anything for you. Well, this could be completely different. You might need more volume. You might need a lot less volume. You might
Yeah.
need to do some more hypertrophy work first. So here's what it says, but how does that translate for you? And it's really true with people's nutrition. I'll say, well, here's some good numbers for you to hit, but let's see how you react on game day. Are you lethargic? Are you gaining weight? Are you losing weight? So here's what it says, but who knows? Who knows? People are different.
But you know what? What matters with that, and this brings up an important point, is like I go back to, since I didn't really have coaching, I was very self aware. A lot of times now you could tell those same athletes these things and be like, well, are you feeling lethargic? Are you feeling, or how did that weight feel when you took it out of the rack or whatever? They have no sense of their body.
Yeah.
Unless you tell them what they're feeling, they have no sense of their own. Like if you ask me how my recovery is today, I don't need a whoop band or strap or anything to tell you. I can tell you how I feel. I can tell you how much sleep I got in general. I'm
Yep.
just very aware. And I think a lot of kids nowadays are very not aware because they have specialized coaching from the jump and they haven't had to think for themselves. So,
Well, in a lot of ways, they're just taught to be drones, where they're told information and then they're required to simply spit it back, but not
yeah.
apply. So then they don't make that cognitive jump. So I can teach someone and saying, hey, well, this is what I see. Your knees are coming in. Looks like your glutes are weak. Or I can also teach them, say, here's ways you can measure your recovery and how you're performing. And after a while, you really don't need to do those things any longer if you have some kind of sense about yourself. Hey, this is what happens. Like there's plenty of guys that go out and get hammered and lift just fine the next morning, right?
Mm-hmm.
They get drunk as shit and they're lifting just fine. Where if I drank 3 days in a row and I came in on a Saturday to hit a big squat, like there's no chance.
Yeah.
And it's also in the same person, it's completely different when you're 21 in college versus me about to be 49, right?
Yep.
Yep.
But that's knowing yourself.
Where I would get in trouble is that I'd say, hey, I know I've done this before. I should be fine. And it might be, a few years ago, I was all right at that.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah. Get a little ego in the way there a little bit. What's something that you wish you knew in high school that you know now in terms of like progressing as an athlete?
Just knowing that I am capable and I belong in that upper tier with everyone else. I came from a background where doing anything was cool, right? Like just getting to compete was cool and I didn't know that. How do I say? A lot of kids, they know they're special from the jump. Like the young basketball player, maybe they're tall and they're coordinated and they know they're talented from the jump. I did not recognize that I had any talent whatsoever, just personally, internally, until I was a sophomore in college. Despite being, MVP of football team and all these other things, to me that was just because, well, I was strong. I was mean, and I was, and that helped, but I didn't realize I had talent. And I wish someone earlier on would have grabbed me and said, "Look, dude, you have no idea what you're capable of. Let's do X, Y, and Z and get you there." I just didn't have that. So I had to
Sure.
find that on my own.
I would say confidence comes from reps. And I would say you probably didn't have enough reps at that point to say, hey, what? I'm good at this. Until you got to that level and you looked around and like, wow, I'm kind of on the podium here quite a bit. And maybe I am actually pretty good at this, right? So it probably takes a little while, don't you think?
It does. And
Right.
again, nowadays they have people like you and, Unbreakable, and you have places to cultivate and groom these kids. We didn't, even Columbus North being this huge school, our weight room when I was there was down in a boiler room, and we had a platform, a squat rack, and a bench.
Mm.
And there was no required lifting. It was just me and a couple other football buddies would go lift because we wanted to be jacked. That was it.
And that
And
was
we'd
it.
read the
So
latest. Yeah, we'd read the latest Muscle and Fitness, then go down and do that workout.
because a 600 deadlift as a kid is no joke. That's a legit number. And 185, 200 pounds, you're over 3 times body weight. That's enormous, right? Two
Yeah,
times body weight bench, and then the squat must have been in the fives. So to say I just
yep.
did that because I had one rack in a magazine kind of hurts my feelings a little bit. It's like, shoot, because I like the Muscle and Fitness magazines. Those are always fun to read. But I was like, dang, like I got that strong just from steadily applying it over and over again, right? And
Yeah,
that's really one of the things that I come back to with these kids or adults that I don't know if I'm on an island or not, but I'm that guy that believes in the whole Rocky scenario where if you just keep pushing a little bit every day, you actually got a shot to be anything. And I try, I believe that. And I don't probably because I watched that movie at such a young age and got burned in my psyche. But if you really just keep pushing every day and you just hold on
yeah,
versus just give up and fade away, like you really got a shot to do something. And I come to these
yeah,
kids, I'm like, you could play in college, and once you get into college, you're one day away. Like football plays on Saturday, you're one day away. The NFL plays on Sunday. You started on Wednesday with those
yeah.
terrible night games at 10 years old. Like you're there. Just
But
go,
but you
right?
can't be afraid, and I think that's the biggest limiter on most kids' vehicles. Is they're so, like, well, you take an adult into the weight room now, and the number one thing they're gonna be worried about is, well, am I gonna get hurt? If I progress, if I do this, am I gonna get hurt? And that is one. If you say my biggest strength, probably as an athlete in general, is I just don't care. I don't
Right,
care if I get hurt. And I mean, I've destroyed my body, and I just don't care. I don't, why do it if you're only going to do it halfway? And I never understood that. So even back to high school, when people are saying, hey, let's throw another plate on. Sure. I mean, what? Okay, the deadlift, it's not going to come off the floor. All right. Or the
right,
squat, I'm going to get pinned to the rack, whatever. I mean, what does it matter? It's worth trying. And
right.
then you don't know. And then all of a sudden your barometer changes. And now you're a 600-pound deadlifter. And now things are getting real, and I've just always been that way. I've never seen a point in being afraid of a weight or a throw or a tackle or anything. It just didn't make sense to me.
It's I don't know. Maybe with the adults, they don't want to get hurt because it's painful and a setback. A lot of times there's a concern that it might look silly lifting next to somebody else. They might look weak, or they might not be doing it correctly, which no one does it correctly at all for a long, long time at first. But I think the bigger fear with these student athletes isn't that like, hey, I could get hurt with this lift. It's what if I throw caution in the wind, set my hair on fire, and go, and I still lose? Or what if I try really hard and I put all this effort in and I don't get a scholarship or I don't make it to the pros? What then? What is my self worth then? And then they'll take it so far as, well, if no one sees me trying really hard and doing the extra work, then no one really knows. So then it didn't really happen. So
Yeah.
if I don't make it, well, it's okay. No one really knew I was doing extra work. Oh, that person, he did all this extra work and still didn't make it. What a loser, what a pussy, right?
Yeah.
And so it come back to that man in the arena quote that, hey, this person's in the fight and they're putting it out there. Like stand up and applaud, right?
Yeah.
You're watching on the sidelines. You're the one that sucks.
Yeah.
Get in the fight
Well,
and
that's
give it a shot.
a good example. Like my sophomore year in the hammer throw, yeah, I went in seated ninth with maybe a 180-foot throw, and we went to Buffalo for MAC. And Buffalo in May is still Buffalo. And we were warming up, and I snuck into the finals, like the eighth guy or something. And I mean, all these guys seated above me, seniors, juniors that have thrown long ways. It starts snowing, and the ring's getting slippery. And at that moment, I'm sitting there like, well, here's my chance, because they're all, you just see everyone like, they're scraping their feet, like trying. You can tell it's in their head, right?
Right.
And in my mindset at that moment was, well, I mean, hell, if the ring gets icy, it'll only make me quicker.
Right.
What's the harm
Less
in that,
less
And
friction.
so then, yeah, so then I think it was like my fifth throw that I busted that 196, and I mean, it literally just wilted everyone else, and it was all because of that mindset of like, I'm gonna go for it. You know what? If I ate shit and fell on my ass, I do that in practice all the time. That's not a big deal. It's
Right.
really, but it's worth going for. But that minute, the minute the skies open, it started snowing. You could see everyone just, you could watch the gears turning. Like, how are we going to do this?
Sure.
And people saying, well, can we delay it and all this? And I'm just like, let's go, let's do this. So, but that's it. You can't, you don't. But then you never know what your ceiling is. And I would much rather die knowing what my ceiling is than never sniffing it because I was afraid.
Sure.
That doesn't
Right.
make any
Right.
sense. So
No. It's hard when you have we host a lot of competitions at the gym. You'll see it with powerlifters, CrossFitters, Highlanders, strongmen for sure, all of them. And they'll say, well, in training, I did this, but my PR is this. I'm like, you are in a controlled environment. No one's around. You have your music playing. You took all the rest that you wanted. That's not a sport. The
no.
sport is when there's things that you can't control. The weather changes when you're a thrower outside.
Mm-hmm.
Like in strongman world, all the implements are different. CrossFit
Yep.
and powerlifting too. Like there's a lot more standardized things, but things are different. And there's people there and there's watching. So that's what makes it the sport, the variability that things could go certain way. And then you have to apply and adapt on the fly and still decide to go out and attack and then win. That's what makes
Yeah.
it a sport. Otherwise, you're just training, right?
Yeah.
Everybody
And
can hit
that's
that,
the most fun.
right? So now it's like, hey, me versus you. Let's see what we got.
Yeah.
You could win. Okay,
Yep.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
give
I
it a
love
swing.
that. I love that part of it. To me, there's nothing better than, I mean, that's why I've stuck around throwing until I was, mid early 40s. Is nothing beats competition. I mean, I'll find something to compete in no matter what, because I love that feeling of the being amped up and the jittery before, and then the feeling when you demolish somebody. That feeling of, I mean, quite literally, I am dominant over you,
Right?
and then also the feeling of when you get beat, going, I have to look back to where I went wrong,
Sure,
and if I fix that, then the likelihood that I'll taste defeat again goes down.
it
I
does.
like every aspect of that. I like every part of that. So,
I have our athletes doing these after action reports. So you got a 10-game season, and people say, it's win or learn. I'm like, no, you're close. It's not it. It's win and learn or lose and learn. But still, you want that feedback loop because you go somewhere else, somebody could be better. So can you get as much knowledge crammed in that head of yours so you can adapt faster?
yep.
So you finish college and you're on the academic side. What's fueling the competitive spirit from a physical standpoint? Because you didn't start Highland Games right off the bat, right?
Well, it's kind of funny. I shifted a little bit. So I go back to, I'm finishing my biomechanics master's, and I knew I wanted to get a PhD. I had never had any neuroscience. I hadn't taken a class in neuroscience. I had no neuroscience background. And I went to an American Society of Biomechanics meeting. I forget where it was, Pittsburgh or somewhere. I had presented some work, and someone had gotten up and done a talk on like bioelectric signals and stuff, and then they always had the microphones about midway down the aisles in the auditoriums. And this guy, this New Zealander, this Kiwi, walks down to the microphone and for the next 10 minutes proceeds to just shred the person that presented on stage. Tell them how their work was totally wrong.
Dang.
They should really quit and do something. I mean, it was like,
Wow.
it was ruthless. And I looked over and I said, I want to do a PhD with that guy. And so then I had no idea who he was. I had no idea what he did. I looked him up. He's Roger Anoka out of University of Colorado. He has 200 publications. He has several textbooks. He has millions of dollars in grants, and he studies neuroscience. So I sent him an email, and I said, here's my transcripts. I've never had any neuroscience. I don't know what I'm getting into, but I'd love to come be a PhD student in your lab. And he responded back with, I don't really see how that's possible, but I'll fly you out.
Okay.
All right. So he flies me out. And the other thing on my GREs,
So you got a shot.
my GREs, we had to, you have to take your graduate exams, your GREs. And I had gotten a perfect score on my quantitative and an 800. And I had scored a 460 on my verbal. Like, I'm pretty sure Appalachian rednecks would
Right.
destroy my verbal score. But I was just like, hopefully he just cares about the quantitative. So he flew me out. I interviewed. And at the end of the day, he sat me down and he was mean and he was stern. And he sat me down. And he said, I have no right to offer you a position whatsoever. He said, but you're a successful student athlete that still graduated with a 3.9. And that shows me that you know at least how to work hard. And that was it. That was what he took me on. And I started that program with all the, undergrads in engineering from Cornell, all these students from all over the place. And here I was from Ball State, which no one even knew what it was, had no background. In the first semester, I'm teaching neurophysiology for them. I still hadn't taken any classes at that point. I was learning 2 to 3 days ahead of these advanced senior undergraduate students.
Dang.
But it proved exactly what I thought, was that I could apply the same drive and work ethic and not lose attitude to academics too. And he had never had a PhD student graduate in under 6 years, and I made it out in under 4.
Huh.
Partly because, and again, it's not because I'm some intelligent beast. It's I'll outwork you. And that was the way it worked. I mean, we only had one lab space, and we had so many people in the lab, it was always super busy. But he had a closet down in this 100-year-old gym in Colorado that he stored all of his old electronics and equipment in, all the stuff that was outdated. And in a year, I had about a year left, was going to be at least 2 or 3 more years left. And I went to him and I said, hey, if I clean that closet out and rewire all those electronics and get everything working, can I use that as my lab for the rest of my dissertation studies? And he kind of laughed and he said, yeah, I mean, I don't think any of it works, and you aren't good at electronics, so I don't know what you're going to do with it. And that was like May something that year. And I just locked myself in there for the months of the summer. And by September, I had a fully functioning second lab for our lab and ran all my studies out of there. And it was not the days of YouTube where I could just look up something and learn how to do it. It was, 100-page, diagrams of electronics and it sucked. It absolutely sucked. But I wasn't going to sit around and let my fate be determined because I didn't have time in the lab. So it's the
So
old
if
bet
you're
on yourself thing, I guess.
head down, fuck you, I'll show you. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see. Oh yeah, really?
Oh,
We'll see.
that was all that was there at Colorado because
Right,
I was never going to get praised.
right.
It was
Did you tell the guy, hey, I
inspired.
saw how you really dressed down this presenter, and I thought I want to be around that because I know I'll get better because of the feedback. Did you tell him like, hey man, you really destroyed that person, and that's why I want to come here to Colorado?
I
Did you tell
never
that
told
guy?
him that. No, I never told him that. Never gave him that satisfaction. Um,
The other thing
no,
is that you just take, hey, I don't want to suck and be 23rd out of 23rd in throws. I want to win this. I want to win this. And then so, yeah, you're not throwing, but hey, 6 years is the deal. All right, let's do it in 4.
yeah.
I'm around all the Ivy League guys. Okay, we'll see.
Hmm.
So you take I want to be competitive and win, and apply that philosophy, and you got a good shot in almost anything. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
sure
again,
do.
but you're not afraid.
Right, because it holds you
And,
back. It creates so much friction.
yep,
Yep. Hmm.
exactly.
So I read through some of the things I asked you, and I liked your responses. Um, right away, the first sentence on mindset, I asked, what are some things that have been critical for you? And you go, if you have the reps, if you have the reps, turn your mind off. Your mind can only mess up what your body is optimized to do. That first clause, though, is crucial, right?
Hmm.
If you have the reps.
Yeah. If you have
But
the
what,
reps, I mean,
but once you do,
yeah.
full send,
Think
go.
think about it. When you get in big moments, the Olympics and these big moments, everyone's pretty equal. You
Right?
know, it, everyone's
Razor
high
thin,
level. Yeah,
razor thin.
everyone's been trained, optimized, all that. The only thing that's going to separate those people is the people whose minds take over and make them shit the bed, or the
Right?
people whose minds maybe can help them a little bit. I heard a great quote when I was actually freshman in college throwing. I forget who, we were at a meet or something, and someone said this, but he said, "No matter what, at every track meet, a third of the athletes will perform far below their expectations or abilities. A third of the athletes will perform right at their expectations or abilities, and a third of the athletes will outperform their expectations and abilities. If you get in your head and allow your mind in there, more likely you're always going to be in the bottom third
Yeah. Always
because
holding yourself down.
it's the sympathetic response. It's your heart rate's too elevated. You have the adrenaline dump. You have all these things. Whereas I know with the amount of reps I get, the amount that I train, if I can leave my mind turned off, my body's going to do what it wants to do. And that's usually correct. So,
And for those that are listening, you say a sympathetic response. That's not like being having sympathy. It's a sympathetic
no,
versus parasympathetic nervous system,
yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah, I got you, bro.
It's getting too amped up. It's getting the cold and clammy hands. It's when you have to pee 14 times before an event, it's the cold sweats, it's your body self-sabotaging itself because it knows, well, we're trying to protect ourselves.
Right,
We don't want to protect ourselves in high level competition. What's the fun in that?
got to go. It's at least worthwhile to understand at the earliest age possible how your body wants to react,
Hmm.
so that you can train it not to. Right.
Yeah.
So you can dictate, hey, this is what happens. I'm going to breathe through this. I'm going to go for a walk, have a drink of water. I'm good to go. Or people listen to certain music to get them centered or calm down. Like a lot of people aren't listening to high voltage rant. They could be listening to Tibetan chant music or classical music, just kind of calm it down, so that
Yep.
when it's time to go, it's time to go. But you'll see people at powerlifting meets too. They'll be pacing, getting
Yeah.
all fired up, and they're a whole heat away from lifting. And I'm like, dude, remember when Tyler Miller was handling me for one of my meets. He goes, "Jim, you just sit down over there and have a good time. And when it's time to warm up, we warm up. And when it's time to fight, you're going to fight on this one lift." I go, "Okay."
Yep.
So it was really, really helpful. On the knowledge piece, I like this part also. What's been critical for you? Not buying into a single dogma. I do what works for me and what works for athletes I coach. I don't care what the training is. If we figure out it is helping, we do it. That's huge, right? Because some people might say linear periodization is better, or a lot of high reps, or conjugate, or whatever, and they all have their place.
Mm-hmm.
What's getting the most for you, right?
Yeah, and especially when you're working with, maybe a little less so with young athletes, but everyone I coach are adult Highland Game athletes, powerlifters, Olympic weightlifters, and here's the reality. It's about fourth or fifth down on their list of priorities in life. So what the hell good is it for me measuring down to the lowest rep, to the lowest percentage, to everything in such fine detail when they're going to go home and have to take their kid to the yard tonight and not get any sleep tonight, which had the bigger impact, right? So I follow much more of the general, like, hey, we know you like this, it makes it work, it's rooted in science, right? It's still anecdotally helping other people. Let's just do it. I have plenty of athletes. I am a huge proponent of the Olympic lifts. You know that, Jim.
Oh, yeah.
But I have athletes that don't do the Olympic lifts. I don't care. If it's not something you ever felt you benefited from, but you benefited from trap bar deadlift jumps and stuff like that, then that's what we're going to do.
Yep.
Why do I care about that?
So just for context for those that don't get it, best all-time hang power snatch? Roughly?
Power snatch, 345, so 160 kilos.
Right.
Roughly. Yeah.
And with cleans, are you actually catching the cleans, or are you just doing clean pulls for your bigger numbers?
The heaviest that I've ever caught is 205 kilos, hang clean.
So mid-fours.
Yeah.
Mid-fours. But you also got to squat too a little bit, right?
Yep.
Front squat, back squat, more front squat. So in the Highland Games, most things are front loaded for you. So front squat's going to translate a little bit better, right?
Yep.
500 squatter there.
I front squatted 650.
So it's
and
close.
back squatted 730.
So you got to have a big enough base with the big lifts, so your power lifts, you can move big weight there too. Like if you can't stand up with 100 kilos, you sure can't snatch it, right?
Oh, exactly.
And you're pretty strong in high school, then through college. If that's your base, developing the power numbers is pretty easy then, isn't it? As long as you're consistent at it and applying.
The hardest part for me was limiting areas that I didn't need to exploit.
Sure.
I didn't need an 800-pound squat. It wasn't going to benefit me. There's a certain limit of where it became diminishing returns. And there was
Like
a point where the training was wrecking me so bad that if I couldn't throw, then what was the point in doing all the squatting?
Once
So
your
it was
squat
knowing how to.
once it's good enough, you just check that box. Okay, well, I'm going to move a lighter weight much faster, right?
So the last 8 years of Highland Games, my barometer was I should be able to front squat 550 for 2.
Okay.
If I can do that any time of year, my squats are fine. I don't need to push them. I just need to do maintenance. That was my general rule of thumb, and I could do that year round at any time. Now I would change the percentages and do everything based on what phase of the season I was in, but yeah, that was my, just be able to do that, I'm good.
We had Tom Berry on a couple of weeks ago from Westside, and he goes, the point of the lifting is so you can apply your skill.
Mm-hmm.
The point of the lifting is so you can take those implements and throw them really, really far. So even if you were the king in the weight room, but you didn't spend enough time throwing, well, you lost.
Yep.
Regardless of the sport, but you still have to check some boxes. on the teamwork, you talked about that where you're training with Matt Winning or even your PhD leader, guru, mentor. You probably still don't get to where you are without someone pushing you or at least challenging you. And for you, you mentioned the javelin thrower. He goes, "Hey, dude, what are you doing, man? You're kind of fucking around here, right?
Yeah.
We can still go out and have fun,
Mm-hmm.
but look at this opportunity. So come chase me. Let's see what we can do this." And then you start beating some other folks, or you're lifting with Matt. Talk about how you got to have someone not always the same person, but it's good to have someone as the antagonist pushing you as a barometer or otherwise.
I think it's always helpful to. It's more someone to set your sights on. In Highland Games, I've never had a training partner the past like 8 years. Occasionally, I would throw with other people, but it was very rare. Occasionally, I would lift with other people, but it was very rare. Um, but I just knew like Spencer Tyler's the best Highland game thrower in history, and we were very good friends. We overlapped, and my thing was I just want a chance at beating Spencer. And the only way I'm going to do that is if my lifting's dialed in, I'm getting all my reps in, I'm competing the appropriate number of times. And Spencer would even tell you the first time I ever competed against him at the pro level, I remember walking because people were just scared. He was so good across all the events. It was truly a battle for second, and people just thought that And I remember the first game. I think I threw against him. We were down in outside of Dallas, Texas, and it was in a rodeo arena. But I remember walking up to him like, "You better bring your A game," and because I'm going to push you today. And he kind of chuckled, and you could tell it was like whatever. And I probably held the stare a little too long, and I was like, "No, really, don't fuck up. Like, don't mess up an event because I'm going to be nipping at the heels." And years later, we still talk about that. Like, he was like, "You're the only person that ever walked up." And I genuinely thought, like, I don't know how he's going to do it, but he might beat me because I had that belief. I don't, again, everyone messes up. Everyone's fallible. So you catch him on the wrong day. He had a streak for like 5 years. He never got beat in the heavyweight for distance. I mean, he's the world record holder, all this stuff. And we were at the biggest game in the world out in Pleasanton, California. I think it was 2019, and I just destroyed him. And the first time he had gotten beat in the heavyweight for distance, and he came back the next event, the lightweight for distance, and threw a world record because he was so pissed he got beat. And that world record stands today. It's like 98 feet 9 inches in the lightweight
Dang.
for distance. But he was like, "I couldn't believe I lost." And I was like, "Dude, I was waiting for the one time."
Right?
So,
And just keep
it's,
pushing and pushing, and then you have a
yeah.
shot and you take a swing.
But I do think having those partners are important. But for me, I never needed someone in the daily workout with me. I needed someone that I knew I was chasing or that didn't
That's
think
hard.
I could do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. This next stat is as impressive as some of the as you throwing for a world record. I have meal prepped every Sunday for the last 14 years and have not missed a week. I prep every meal through Friday. I leave Saturday open for whatever. I don't have to think about nutrition at all. It is Tupperware and go.
Yep.
14 years, bro. That is amazing discipline. That's amazing tenacity. And in any sport, I always say it's about 2/3 of your success is going to come from how you fueled yourself over time
Mm-hmm.
and your preparation, and then on the day of. Not missing a day 14. I'm nowhere near that good. That is impressive. Is it all you, or is your wife helping you a little bit?
No, no. She's cooked like 2 meals in our entire time married. It's all me. It's look, here's the key is I look at food as fuel.
Right.
Um I every meal is either beef and rice or turkey and rice. and it's been that way. I mean, at least that for the last 7 or 8 years, it never deviates. I just plow it down, and then I'll have an apple or maybe some veggies on the side. But it's always the same, and I cook every Sunday morning at 5 or 6 a.m. Knock it out. Um, if we have something going or I'm out of town or something, at the latest I might do it, Sunday night or early Monday morning. But I'm getting it done.
So you eat a
I
lot of the
just
same things. You just get. It's obviously boring, but who cares, right? Because it's just
yeah,
the next. It's the next task.
yeah, and more
Like
importantly, I know I digest it well. I'm not walking around farting everywhere
right
because I'm trying these new foods and doing, like there's solace in the consistency. So
for sure. We had 14 years. I haven't had anybody put up with me for 14 years,
I
let
know it's
alone
amazing.
right.
And it's still like, even though I've been kind of retired, I still do it every Sunday. I just don't know. I don't want to leave for work and not have food in my bag ready for the day. It freaks me out.
What age were you when you got back in the Highland Games and started competing?
That wasn't until 34 or 35 years old.
Did you
I
still
took a
lift
lot of time off.
all those years?
Yeah, I didn't do anything well, part of the issue too was from 2000. So from being 24 years of age when I walked away from hammer throw to 35, I had a number of I had back surgeries, shoulder surgeries. I had done a lot of damage in a short period of time, and then add to that, I was just so busy with school. I took up a lot of other things. I did competitive judo for a number of years. Um, Mountain biked a lot. I did a lot of other stuff, but it wasn't really. It was more just because, again, I wanted to compete. But then, actually, Sarah Sparks or Sarah Branham, um, around 2013, she was a hammer thrower, wire hammer, up at Indiana Wesleyan or Trine or one of those. She was really good, but she never really had a coach. And somehow she had found me through something social media, and she reached out and said, "Hey, I'm going to keep throwing for a couple more years just on my own. I need a coach." And I was like, "Well, I mean, I haven't done it for a long time, but I'll come out and coach you." And I had coached her for maybe 1 or 2 years, and then she said, "Why don't you come out?" Because she had done a couple Highland Games. She said, "Why don't you come out and try a Highland game?" And I was like, "Listen, if you hit 200 feet in the hammer throw in wire hammer, I'll go do a Highland game." And she went out to California for a meet and threw over 200 feet. And so then the next week, like next month, maybe down here in Columbus, I signed up to do the Columbus Scottish Festival, um, which was pretty funny because, typically you start with the C class, the lowest class, or novices,
Let
and
me
then you
guess.
work up to B's and A's, and
He's like, nah,
I
fuck it.
si-
Put me in there with everybody else.
well, I signed up as a B mainly
Uh
because I
huh.
didn't know what the classes meant. Um, but then I ended up throwing with the A's, and I won the game overall. And it wasn't one of those where I had prepped by watching YouTube, and I mean, I just showed up. It was literally I hadn't even looked up what the events were. Um, yeah, and then that set it off, and uh, then I think I competed around 80 amateur games before I turned pro, and I think I lost one outright, and then I tied for first in another one, and I won every other one.
Why'd you wait so long to
So,
turn pro then?
so the game I tied. So the biggest amateur game in the country is the North South in Florida, and it's in January. And they pick the top 5 amateurs from the South, and they go against the top 5 amateurs from the North. My first full season, I got selected to go down for the North, compete for the North, which was hilarious because it's a very political thing, and they want people that have been around for a while and that are going to help the team win. And I was the last person to get selected for Team North. And at the time, the South had a guy getting ready to turn pro, Dan Tennyson, another good buddy of mine, but he was like lights out. He was getting ready to turn pro. He was amazing. And I showed up down there and I tied him for points. He won 4 events, individual events, and I won the other 3. He got second in all the ones that I won. I got second in all the ones that he won. But because of the tie, it then went to the individual point wins, so he got the win. We tied with the same score, but he
Right.
got the ultimate win. But our North team just decimated the South. And
Nice.
everyone's like, we didn't know you were this good, blah, blah. I was like, to be
Me
honest,
neither.
I didn't know I was either. But I stayed amateur a whole nother year because I wanted to go back and win that game. So
Okay.
then the next year, I dominated, and our North team won by the largest margin I think it ever had. So
Beautiful.
then I turned pro.
You competed internationally,
So Canada,
but not like
I never,
Ireland and Scotland. Nothing out there in Europe.
no, there's
Huh.
no money to be made. So once you go pro, the name of the game is make money. And the money games are here in the US.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
a lot of guys will go to Scotland to do the circuit to say they did it once,
Sure.
but no one goes there for the it's they don't pay well, the equipment sucks. It's a lot more pomp and circumstance and a lot less throwing.
You know, I do like the bagpipes. I really do.
Oh, you'll
They-
get tired of them eventually.
How about the Arnold?
The Arnold
Good
was
time.
interesting.
Good time. Not a good time. Both.
Both. Again, the first time I did the Arnold, I went in as a unknown, and I literally knew nothing. I had only done a few games, and they had the top amateurs in the world, and I got allowed to go because I was fairly local. And again, dominated. I think I won the majority of the events, and it was kind of funny because we were doing stuff that, like, you throw an extra heavy sheaf. I broke the world record for the heavy sheaf we had that day. But I was doing things that it was, again, kind of the ignorance is bliss thing. I just had no idea what I was doing, so I just went all gas again, and it paid off. So
Constant trend in your history.
yeah, but why? It was fun. So
Right.
why hold
So
back?
why not? So why? Right. That's right. And now at this point, you're at the. You're even published. Not necessarily in the PhD world, right? I'm sure you are there with all your articles and stuff. But more importantly, in the throwing world, you and Carrie Overfell, right, out of Kentucky.
Yep.
You guys even have a book out on Highland Games and throwing.
Yeah. So I'd only been in the Highland Games for a year, maybe 2, and Kerry had helped me a fair bit. Just I had thrown at one of his games and threw far, and he took interest. And I remember one day I called him, texted him, and I said, "Hey, I want to write a training book, but it's kind of ignorant for me, this guy who's only just started the Highland Games, to write a training book. Who's going to trust it?" And I said, "I want to throw your name on it, and what I want is kind of anecdotes, funny things to put at the start of every chapter." And I said, "I'll write the book." And I said, "All proceeds will go towards your gym." That was my only requirement. I didn't want any money from it because it doesn't.
You can write my book
It,
too.
we can talk about that later. So,
Right.
but yeah, so it just worked out really well, and we sold far more copies than I ever assumed we would. So
That's
it's been a really fun
a
experience.
pretty good deal. This
Yeah.
piece you wrote here on recovery, you're like, essentially, you're like, I kind of suck at it. I don't really pay attention. I neglect it. I don't. My sleep is shit. I don't do any other modalities. But whatever. I'll do some stretching every once in a while. At least, being a big boy, like you got like an ice bath every once in a while, right?
I've had spells with it where I do them, but I also live by the motto, like, we train because we love to train.
Sure.
Now, 2 days to 3 days a week would be optimal for my training. Like if I were to go back now and compete, honestly, I believe 2 days a week hard would be perfect for my lifting.
Yep.
Would I do that? Never. Because I love training.
Yeah, right. Yep.
So why would I only do so much and then be like, well, you need to rest. You need to
throttle back.
Yeah, I do this stuff because I want to do it.
Right.
I don't have $1 million contracts on the line. If I did, maybe that'd be a little different. But I'm controlling my own destiny. So if I'm going to do that, I want to train.
Gotcha.
And it's the same. I don't get enough sleep. Why? Because I like to do other things.
Right.
I like to read. I like to work hard. I do a lot of woodworking. When I come home late in the evening, I'm out in the garage doing woodworking stuff. I have things I want to do, and sleep gets in the way of that. So I just will cut that out.
Your daughter still design tattoos for you?
Oh yeah, I still have plenty of.
So when I first met you, I see a number of I'll say more professionally designed tattoos, right? And then I see it looks like someone had a coloring crayon on some paper, made a drawing, and that's on your arm, and you're like, yeah, sure enough. So your little daughter would draw something for you. Next thing you know, it's imprinted on your body to go along with painted fingernails and toenails, right? Because your daughter's she's a cheerleader, right?
She was. Now she's full into theater and show choir, and now she's a true performer in high school. So
gotcha. Well, no one's really going to argue with Zach when he's as thick as he is, but also fun to talk to. And by his own words, he likes to hurt people.
Yeah.
But he's covered in tattoos, and that looks like little drawings from little kids, and his toes and fingers are all painted red, white, blue, pink, and orange and yellow. So, a little fun fact. Any other advice for student athletes? Because the premise of the show is called Athlete Builder. We're trying to work with, whether it's kids or adults, everyone, you look at yourself as a physical specimen, and you want to see what you can become physically. Any other advice or parting words for those folks from your tutelage?
You may think you're working hard enough, but the reality is you probably aren't.
Yeah. Push more.
Yeah.
When you're training, what do you like to listen to?
Oh, it depends. I love my old Slayer and a lot of Meshuggah and all the heavy metal, but also I listen to a lot of jazz, classical. Sometimes you got to put on the 90s rap just because that, Jim. There's there's things, but it's kind of the mood. Honestly, most of the time I don't listen to anything anymore.
Yeah, I do that too.
I got enough voices in my head to keep me occupied.
What's a place or an adventure you'd still like to do that you haven't done yet?
Well, when my daughter graduates high school, we're going to take her to Paris. That's always long been the graduation present, and I want to see her. I've been to Paris, spent quite a bit of time in France, but the day I'll get to hop out of a cab in front of the Eiffel Tower with her will be the thing that will be the last thing I have on my definite list. I want to see her face.
That's beautiful. Favorite sports movie?
Oh, it has to be The Program, baby. The Latimer, the early 90s FSU kind of documentary sort of. Right. That was who it was meant to. Oh, that was great.
Favorite sport to watch?
Probably wrestling, Olympic wrestling, not professional wrestling.
Right.
Olympic wrestling, Olympic weightlifting, MMA. I don't watch football at all. I get no joy out of watching football anymore. I really don't watch any other mainstream sports.
Favorite athlete to watch perform?
Man, that's a tough one. I'd love to say the Michael Jordans because, again, that's the era I grew up in. But Ryan Krauser in the shot put, the world record holder, current shot putter. He's a beast. He comes from a throwing family. He's physically more gifted than anyone out there, but he combines that with a very analytical mind, and it's awesome to watch him.
Awesome. Favorite book?
Well, the Masters Highland Games training manual. What else?
The one that
Written
you
by
wrote.
yours truly.
That's right.
I read a lot of different things from the business world and just stuff that I've gotten into. It's kind of like when I say I don't follow the same dogma for training. I don't really follow. I think let's say 70% of what I read is good, and 30% is marketing bullshit, and they can all be in the same book.
Right.
So I kind of take everything with the same grain of salt.
Gotcha. Favorite superhero?
Batman.
Favorite villain?
Batman. Because he's kind of a villain, too. He's a dick.
Can be.
And he doesn't have superpowers, so it's awesome.
You get one lift in the gym. This is your lift going forward. What's your favorite lift?
Snatches. Easy.
If you had 10 million, what job would you do?
I would open up a gym
Plainfield?
slash field slash cheer gym slash wrestling center all under one giant roof and manage that building and hire my best friends as coaches that I've had, and we would be the most dominant in wrestling, Olympic weightlifting, cheerleading, Highland Games, track and field. It'd be awesome.
That'd be fun. Do you have a quote you like more than others?
I don't know who said it, but I say it to athletes I coach all the time, and that's "Don't suck." Like it's a really simple, it's just don't suck. Like if you're going to compete at something, don't suck.
We were judging one of the contests we had at our place, and I don't know if it was Snodgrass or whoever, but one person threw, and usually the ones that are better are always given the newbies, pointers because they, I and others we didn't know what the hell we were doing, or spinning the wrong way probably, and so somebody that was actually pretty decent but had a bad throw, had a miss. Chris turns to them and just looks at him and goes, "Man, just do better, dude."
Yeah.
And that's it. I'm like, and that's all the time. That's those guys. They're always having a good time and they're saying shit like that. And just do better. I'm like, oh, got it. I got it now. Thank you.
But that goes along exactly with what we've been saying.
Yeah.
What, get out of your head, dude.
Yeah.
There's not a solution to every single thing that goes wrong. Sometimes things just go wrong.
That's true. Tim Grover points out that winning does not care about you. And he says, you could do everything right and have your best game ever and still get your ass handed to you and get beat. Or you might get cheated and still lose, right? That it happens. But that's why it's a sport then. So that makes it okay. Man, Zach, as always, love hanging out and talking with you. Love having you at my gym or competing. Sitting around talking about whatever, sports, throwing, lifting, drinking. It's always a good time. And thank you for being so generous and hanging out with us, me and Luke, and really enjoyed our time. I got plenty of notes here and plenty of insights. So thank you for the help and the generosity today. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Luke. Thank you, Jim. It's always a pleasure.
All right.